Are you intrigued how the NFL draft could play out and affect things for fantasy? Do you want to know what landing spots could mean for different prospects? Well, stick around as I'm joined by not one, not two, but three phenomenal experts who walk us through a Superflex rookie mock draft based on a real NFL mock draft. Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Sanctuary. We're back with another mock draft. We are going to be running through a 2-round Superflex rookie mock draft with 3 of the best and brightest minds in the community. First up, I'm joined by Daniel Harms of Football Guys and NFL33.com. Daniel, are you enjoying rookie season?
Oh, it's fantastic. Rookie season is a year-round thing for a lot of people now. So we get to watch these players as they come up through college. And honestly, during this time, it's so much consumption of younger players and seeing how they not just this past year, but years before too, to see how they've grown. So it's always a lot of fun. And I appreciate you having me on, man.
No, we appreciate you jumping on. And then I'm also joined by Dave Heilman of Sports Gambling Podcast and Network. Dave, we're going to be diving into a slightly different format where we're drafting from a real mock draft. Were there any particular picks or players going to particular landing spots that surprised you?
There were a few. I had to see some trades up and things like that, and that's the fun. Picking all 32 correct is impossible for the NFL draft, and draft capital and things like that weigh very heavily on your dynasty rankings. We've seen that, and so seeing guys that are being in second round where we expect them to go kind of locks you in on, okay, that's what I expected to happen. But then when you guys do go to the third and fourth round, it really challenges your beliefs, and so being able to play the scenario out is cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then last but by no means least, we couldn't have a Superflex draft without Mr. Superflex himself, John Hogue from DLF. John, how deep are you into your rookie? How deep are you into your rookie evaluation process? Are you fully in depth, or are you still feeling things out at the moment?
I'm farther along into it than I usually would be at this point in the season, and I talk about this all the time on the Superflex Super Show. I feel like we've got roughly 20% of the information that we're going to need to evaluate these players. Landing spot, draft capital, those are much bigger than athletic profiles. But a good friend of mine, Zach Reed, just came on the show and made a really good point that, there's a great opportunity here to get to know these players. And then, once landing spot, once draft capital, once we get all of those things, it's gonna change things, as it should. But we can kind of lean back on those priors a little bit. And that's where you find the guys like Tank Dell and Puka Nacua is saying, I thought these guys were it was a better athletic profile than the draft capital necessarily kind of dictates. So I'm a lot farther into it than I typically would be. In the past, it's been very bah humbug. Let's not talk about rookies until May.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance, isn't it? Trying to balance that kind of initial priors, how much do you stick with kind of your thoughts and opinion, and how much do you weigh things based on what the NFL is saying. But we're going to dive into, as I said, a Superflex rookie mock. We are basing this off the latest Pro Football Network 7-round mock, which was released on the 12th of Feb by James Fragoza. So we've got every player has got draft capital, every player has got a landing spot. So if we're talking it through as we go, we've not seen into the future, but we're basing it off something real. So Daniel, you won the fastest guest first prize, and you have been awarded the 101. As we were talking before the show, it feels like there's a consensus already formed. Are you going to follow that consensus with the 101?
I don't think I'm going to. And honestly, I think at this point, these mocks are as good of finding out some information as anything. And if you always do the exact same thing, you never really see how it's going to turn out in the rest of your mock draft. So with that being said, the 101, I know that Dave's going to be upset about this, but Jaden Daniels is going to be my number one pick. And a lot of this comes down to what we've heard, well, really what I've seen over the past year for him, the growth from 2022 in just the pure passing sense to 2023. Now I know he's throwing to guys like Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors, but he was a much more well-rounded passer than I expected to see. He was going through his progressions. He was getting to checkdowns if it wasn't there, but also the added explosive ability that he has. He accounted for 103 explosive plays last year at LSU, which is an incredible number. And there's not any of these ways you can really stop him at this point in terms of, just put a top on the defense and just say you can't throw the deep ball, which come to find out he's one of the best, if not the best deep ball thrower in this class. You add on the fact that he's an explosive runner in the field and just with the vision and everything. And all of this being said, in this mock draft, he was taken by the Washington Commanders, who now have Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator. He's going to be throwing the ball all over the place. And you add all the things that we saw with Kyler Murray under that offense. No, it wasn't the best schematic offense, but he's going to be asked to use his legs. He's going to be asked to throw the ball downfield. This is a very good offense that it can be with the couple of the weapons they have in Washington, and they're going to probably add to that as well. So it makes it a very intriguing prospect when you look at Jaden Daniels being airdropped into that offense.
Yeah, and I think there's the concern perhaps about that ability to operate from the pocket and some questions there. One of the questions that I don't see many people talking about is he's obviously now a fifth-year starter. We had the 3 years at Arizona State, the 2 years at LSU. Does that concern you at all, that he could have declared any of the last 2 drafts and hasn't, and we're now waiting for him to having finished that 5th year before he's decided to enter that draft?
There's always a little bit of concern with that, but I see it as experience. He grew. The fact that he grew from last year to this year is a big selling point for me. It's not just someone who kept going back to try to get as much out of his college, as he could and get more NIL. He used it to grow and to be a better quarterback. And when you're trying to, I guess, really show players or teams that you're not just a runner, that's a very valuable thing for me when doing this evaluation. So the growth from last year to this year is a huge thing. I know he's going to be a bit older, but at the end of the day, I'm not worried about him being on my team for the next, 15 years. I'm worried about maybe the next couple of years right now, just to see what he's going to be able to do and how high he can perform in this offense. So that's really more of what I've seen from him. And that's why I'm really leaning towards it right now. And this mock to see how it works.
No, sounds good. And Dave, you talked before the show. I feel like you tipped your hand slightly, saying that you were going to take Jaden Daniels. So you've been sniped already. You've got the 102. Are you happy with who's fallen to you here, or would you have preferred Jaden Daniels?
Yeah, I mean, it was just reverse psychology on Daniel there. As far as Jaden Daniels, he's been the fastest riser, and so I don't have any problem with anyone taking him 101. And honestly, if this scenario plays out, it's going to be huge who goes to Washington versus the Patriots. The Patriots with Alex Van Pelt, West Coast offense, but it's a bad offensive line. It's a very depleted receiving core. You don't have the weapons. You don't have some of the things that you do in Washington. And we saw this last year where Anthony Richardson was off to a very hot start for Indianapolis before he got hurt. And so I have no problems there. And if Jaden Daniels is going number 2 in real mock draft to the NFL, there's no argument there. And Caleb Williams, if you want to look for a really bad game, go to the Notre Dame tape. It's pretty bad. This guy he was 0 for 4 against top 25 opponents last year. And so there are some concerns. There are some chips in the armor. And so he's not a can't miss prospect, but there is so much upside with this guy. And he's not only as a passer does all the things you're looking for in today's NFL, but he also can run. And so you look at a game like Washington where he really showed both skills off. You're looking at, a lot of the things that people love about him. You can see in the Washington tape. He goes to Chicago in this mock draft. He also gets a very, very good receiver in this mock draft. And, they're going to build around him. They got, Shane Waldron there in the pick. So I'm taking Caleb Williams here at the 2 spot. And, I think I think we're going to be very happy with some of the quarterbacks in this class.
No, sounds good. And then coming across to you, John, with the 103, the two quarterbacks off the board. It feels like there's an elite three of the quarterback positions that is established so far. We've also obviously got the potential superstar wide receiver. I called him the safest dynasty pick in the last 7 years on last week's show. Are you going to go wide receiver here, or are you going to keep the trend going with the quarterbacks?
Well, typically I would go. I prefer to go quarterback here, but the stars just kind of aligned. You know, Dave kind of talked about the landing spot in New England for Drake May. That's where we've got him landing in this mock draft, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. with about the best possible landing spot for a wide receiver. Going to Arizona. So as much as I hate to do it, as much as I feel like just because of positional scarcity, this is a little too high for a wide receiver typically. I just think that it's a much safer pick to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. here and take advantage of Kyler Murray's new wide receiver one.
Are you concerned at all about, you know, we've heard rumors that through last season the Cardinals were potentially considering moving on from Kyler. It now seems that they're committed. Do you think that could potentially change, and we could see, you talked about it being one of the best landing spots for a wide receiver? Could the Cardinals fall out of love again with Kyler, and it's a good landing spot initially, but potentially falls apart as the year moves on?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a possibility, but I think that what we just learned is they're not going to make a move like that without a contingency plan, you know. So the reason that it kind of made sense going into 2023 was the potential that you have the down season with Kyler Murray on IR. And then you end up in a position to draft Caleb Williams. That's the type of guy that you can move off of Kyler Murray for. So, you know, it really kind of starts with what's the alternative and where do we find the alternative? And until they can answer that question, I have zero doubt that Kyler Murray is going to be their guy.
Yeah, it feels like if they were going to move on from him, this was the year that was going to happen, wasn't it? Because you feel like moving forward, hopefully they're not going to have a top 4 pick again anytime soon.
Right.
So before we come to Daniel's pick, if you are here, if you are watching, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We are just getting into rookie fever. We have got plenty more mock drafts coming. We have got positional previews and so much more. Daniel, so we've had 3 of the first 4 picks in the NFL draft from this mock have gone in our first 3 picks. Are you going to make it 4 here?
I'm not entirely sure. You know, I'm looking at this a little bit differently now because of the landing spot for Drake May. It's not fun. I don't like New England. The offense isn't going to be good his first couple years. And honestly, Drake May is a little. I love Drake May's tools. Don't get me wrong. I think he's like one of the best over the last couple of years prospects with his tools. There are some things that worry me about his game, and when you're going into an offense that you don't have weapons to help bail you out, it becomes a little bit of a worry. So I'm going to actually go with Malik Neighbors, who was just drafted in this mock to the Chicago Bears, pairing him with Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, and Shane Waldron, who is now the offensive coordinator. I like that pairing. He has a lot of experience. You know, 2 positions ago, he was with the Rams, so he worked with, Matt Stafford and Sean McVay in that offense, and then he was the offensive coordinator in Seattle, be with Geno Smith and the weapons they have there. So the offense is probably going to look a little bit different from what we've seen in Chicago. Obviously, you have a new quarterback, but I like what Shane Waldron brings to there. You're going to have both him and DJ Moore with that vertical ability, and they might go ahead and air the ball out a little bit more, which I'd be very happy to see. And Malik Neighbors is not just a deep ball guy. He's a catch it, and he can score from anywhere on the field. So when I'm looking at what this landing spot for the 7-round mock gives me, I'm much more excited about what Malik Neighbors can do in his first season and possibly first few seasons than I am about what Drake May is going to do in New England.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess my one question to you, Daniel, would be, we've seen traditionally, rookie quarterbacks struggles to sustain elite production at the wide receiver position. They could sometimes do it with one, but normally struggle to have two. We've obviously got DJ Moore in Chicago. There's Cole Kmet as well, if you want to throw him in the mix. Would you be worried if this were the scenario that there may be some, should we call them growing pains for Malik Neighbors in an offense with a rookie quarterback that could potentially affect his value through that rookie season?
It's possible. I'm less worried about it because of what he can do from a short average depth of target. Like, you can just get him the ball on a wide receiver screen or on a quick slant, and it would be to the house sometimes. And that's going to be obviously growing with Shane Waldron, growing with Caleb Williams, seeing what they want to do with Caleb Williams, at USC. It wasn't exactly I want to check the ball down, I want to throw the quick screen, things like that. It was much more of I want to keep my eyes downfield and throw it downfield, which can help Malik Neighbors as well. So however they want to go with it, Malik Neighbors' skill set, along with DJ Moore's, feeds into that. And I'm less worried about that because at this point, Malik Neighbors is still one of the most talented players in this draft class. And I'm just going to go ahead and take him and be worried about it later if it's not working out. If it's not working out for him, it's not working out for Caleb, who was taken, a little bit earlier in this draft as well. So like I said, I'm less worried about that myself.
Right. Moving on to you, Dave, with the 105. Now, we've seen, 3 months ago, Drake May was locked in 102. We've seen that he's gone to the 103 to New England in this mock draft, and that fall is starting to happen. Are you going to continue the fall, or are you going to end it right now?
Yeah, I mean, we could be having a totally different conversation if Drake May goes to Washington. And I think part of the real NFL talk is hurting Drake May. Just listen to Move the Sticks this weekend, talking about Bucky Brooks top 5, and he has Drake May at 3, Jaden Daniels at 2. Nobody can, all the tape watchers and analytics guys there's no way you can say that Drake May had a better 2003 than Jaden Daniels. And when you look at the type of competition he played, he only played 2 top 25 teams. He does not have a signature win. In the 2 top 25 teams, he played UNC played Miami. He won, but he had 51.5% completion, had 273 yards and 4 touchdowns. Good game, but the completion percentage kind of question mark. He lost to NC State. He ran for 106 yards, which is fantastic, but he had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Didn't beat NC State. Not the great UNC roster, not a great supporting cast, so I don't completely put the L on the quarterback. But you want a guy like that that's going to be the number 2 overall, number 1 overall guy to dominate against NC State. And it just didn't happen. And you kind of see that throughout Drake May's career where he's hasn't played a lot of top competition, but when he does, you don't see him take over, and that's what you want to see. There's a lot of love for Drake May in the streets, and it is quarterback. So I am going to go quarterback here, Drake May. I think this top 5 shows you some trade back scenarios for those that are thinking about trading back and different things like that. Like you said, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a very safe pick. Neighbors, he's closer to Marvin Harrison Jr. on a lot of people's boards, and you can get him there. But Drake May, he's got the rushing ability that you're looking for, and that's what a lot of these top 3 guys give you, and that's why they're the top 3. But Drake May's also got a lot of comparisons to Justin Herbert and Josh Allen because of the size. He's the prototypical size as far as comparison to the top 3, and he's got the tools you're looking for. And if he's in the right situation and they do develop around him, someone could trade up. There's a lot of scenarios where New England takes them, but this is a very, very bad roster. Move the Sticks did a whole breakdown of the roster and said, all right, how many blue chip players they have? 0. This is a team that could trade back. What if they go and trade for Justin Fields? They trade a 2nd or 3rd round pick for Justin Fields. They put pick 3 on the board and say Giants, Atlanta, Denver, Las Vegas, and that they come up. So I'm going to take Drake May here. I know we put him on New England in this mock draft, and I'm going to take it. He's the quarterback, and I just like the player.
Yeah, so coming to you now, John. So do you feel like that top 5 is a tier, or do you think there's another player that warrants being in that tier along those top 5?
I think so strategically, this is going to be a weird draft for me. This is not how I would typically draft if I was building a roster. But I'm going to end up without a quarterback here. So to answer the question, I think there's one more player who belongs in this top tier. and that's going to be my pick, tight end Brock Bowers, who I think is also a very safe pick, good landing spot in this case. And it's the positional scarcity. I think people go a little too far with overstating the upside of a player like Brock Bowers. We're hearing a lot about how he's everything that we thought that Kyle Pitts was going to be. It's statements like that. It's those platitudes that kind of get us into the situation that we ended up in with Kyle Pitts. But I do think that there's a nice safe floor with Brock Bowers. I think that there's a path to being a fantasy relevant starting tight end, and that's in a position that is just an absolute wasteland. That's all we really need. And this is the one guy in this draft that I think you say it's you're getting a long-term starter at a very difficult position to navigate.
And are you concerned about production in year one? Obviously, we saw Laporta last year kind of broke all sorts of records, and it feels like broke the mold slightly in terms of that rookie tight end. Are you expecting Brock Bowers to, I don't want to say follow in those footsteps because I feel like they might be setting the bar too high for him, but do you feel like he's going to be a reliable starting tight end for your dynasty roster in 2024, or are you looking towards 2025 and beyond?
I think that he could contribute as soon as early as 2024. It is a little bit of a tricky landing spot considering so he's going to Indianapolis in this mock draft, and the fact that your franchise quarterback played all of 3 games and didn't even finish any of those games, so it kind of makes you wonder what exactly you've got on offense. But kind of the easy way to ease in a quarterback, especially one that you're trying to get him comfortable standing in the pocket and delivering the football, is to get him looking for the big body tight end who works the middle of the field. That's kind of going to be the big difference between him and Kyle Pitts, is the ability to work more down the seam and just kind of in the soft spot of a zone. And so, I think there's definitely an opportunity for him to contribute right away. I would not ever bet on any rookie tight end, I don't care how good they are, to ever do what Sam Laporta just did. And part of that is, obviously, like he did something that no one else had ever done. But part of the issue as well is just that, if we were to make that bet last year, it would have been on Dalton Kincaid, not Sam Laporta. So yeah, I would caution against going too far with our expectations and with our projections, but there's still value in the fact that you're going to get like I said, a very safe, very solid fantasy starter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And now coming back to you, Daniel, for the 107, feels like the draft board's opening up slightly. You could go a few different ways here. Where are you going to head?
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking at Brock Bowers there. Like John was talking about, positional scarcity makes him kind of bumps him into that tier almost by himself because of what he's able to do. So that was definitely something I was looking at. But with the way that this is going, we've got the quarterbacks that you can say the top 3 tier quarterbacks and everything else. And I'm just going to go ahead and take the best player left on the board, Rome Odunze. And I love the landing spot here because it is with Trevor Lawrence, who is one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. And they do need him. They need him to be there. I don't expect Calvin Ridley to return to Jacksonville. And there was a weird dynamic with him, and he needed to have Zay Jones on the field to be productive. And it was a very weird dynamic. I'm not sure what the offense was really doing. We know that there were some injuries with Trevor that did not help. Offensive line did not play very well last year. So while all of this is being said, they have to improve some things, but the quarterback to wide receiver connection is going to be really helpful. A guy who can win all over the field with his routes. And then he also has the ability to go and get the football, bail a quarterback out at times when you desperately need him to. The fact that he went back as a senior to put on some weight and say, I can do a lot more than just run routes. I can be physical. I can outwork players. I can use all of these tools that I have at my disposal, whether it's route manipulation, stem manipulation, making a cornerback do one thing so he can take advantage of his ball skills down the field, and showing that in his last season with Michael Penix, who was just airing the ball out to everyone that wanted it last year. And it was really a lot of fun to watch. That's going to be something that ties with Trevor Lawrence, because he does have a little bit of that. I'm going to throw this into this window no matter what. I'm going to do it. And Rome Odunze really does pair well with that. So I like how this unfolds here, because it's a good landing spot and a really good player that Trevor Lawrence can help take advantage of.
Yeah, I absolutely love this pick, because I think I'd identified this as almost the number one landing spot for anyone in this entire draft. I think he meshes perfectly, as you said, with Trevor Lawrence, who, let's be honest, at times probably takes too many risks. And I think that's probably the biggest knock on Trevor Lawrence. I'm the biggest Trevor Lawrence fan you will ever find, but I think he probably trusts himself and takes too many risks and turns the ball over a little bit too much. So yeah, if we can find a guy that he can quite rightly place that trust in, I think it could be a phenomenal land spot for Odunze. So Dave, coming to you, 108 up next. Where are we going to go here?
Yeah, and I love that pick. About Calvin Ridley not coming back. I think a lot of people don't know. Part of the deal was conditional. If they re-sign Calvin Ridley, I believe they have to send a second-round pick to Atlanta. So that's more motivation for them to go into this draft, which is chock full of talent. And I do love the landing spot. Rome Odunze was next on my board. Now I'm picking between Troy Franklin and Brian Thomas. I have Brian Thomas slightly ahead. Troy Franklin's going to light up the combine. This guy he's big and he can move. I think he's going to be a lot of people's boards after the combine. But Brian Thomas goes to Buffalo. We don't know what's going to happen with Stephon Diggs, but we do know that Gabriel Davis is a free agent. They can't afford to bring him back. Free agent, even if you're MVS, you get paid, and they don't have any money. And so they're going to have to go into the draft. They talked about it last year, wanting to go and into the draft. They got Dalton Kincaid because they missed out on the receivers. This year they get one. They get Brian Thomas. One thing people will talk about with him is his contested catch rate. It's great, but then you think, oh, can this guy not separate? They throw a lot of back shoulder fades and moves where it looks like it's a contested catch. That's just a design play, and you got to kind of filter that stuff out. The analytics doesn't do that for you. But Brian Thomas can play. He can separate. He can run routes, and he's a massive target, alpha type of body type. Going to Buffalo with Josh Allen, yeah, sign me up.
And would you prefer this landing spot to Buffalo if Stephon Diggs is still in town? Or I know there's some rumors and some potential suggestions that Stephon Diggs could be on his way out. Would you prefer that if Brian Thomas can be the true number one target leader?
You can make an argument for both. I mean, at the end of the day, long term, he's with Josh Allen, and it's a good play. Short term, Stephon Diggs draws a lot of coverage and a lot of noise, and he doesn't have to go and face the other team's number one right off the bat. And so, yeah, he might not get as much volume if Stephon Diggs is in town, but he's going to be able to develop and be able to take advantage of second and third corners. And if Stephon Diggs is gone and he's the alpha, I mean, he's going to have to go in day one and face Sauce Gardner twice a year, Jalen Ramsey twice a year, and have a very difficult schedule where, that's what Garrett Wilson, I mean, not Garrett Wilson, does Sauce Gardner, but it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, John, we're coming to you now for the 9th pick. There's another first-round quarterback still on the board. Are you finally going to draft a quarterback, or are you going to keep with the positional players? Yeah, I think you're on mute, John.
Yeah. Sorry. Let's just lean into this at this point. Like this is extremely uncomfortable for me, so we might as well just keep going in the same direction. Dave made a difficult decision there in order to make mine easy, so I've got to honor that by taking Troy Franklin with the landing spot. And it, just really kind of consolidates everything that they've been trying to find with all of these different perimeter wide receivers that they've been bringing in over the years, looking for the speed, looking for the size, looking for the yards after catch abilities. They finally just get this in one player instead of messing around with the Kadarius Toney and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and they finally just kind of consolidate this into one player. So I love the fit in Kansas City.
Yeah, it feels slightly unfair if Kansas City can come out of this draft with a potential superstar wide receiver. Do you think that he'd mesh well in a wide receiver room with Rashee Rice and potentially others? If we want to talk about Sky Moore, or maybe just forget about him.
Yeah, I'm kind of over Sky Moore at this point, but yeah, Rashee Rice, very similar skill set, very similar build, and that really kind of is, that's really kind of what they're looking for. They're kind of looking for, West Coast style of offense that Andy Reid has always run. They're kind of looking for those, the guys that you can get the ball into their hands in space, run some quick screens and let them make the plays with their legs. But these are also guys who can create separation deep down the field and let Mahomes throw deep. So, to me, it just kind of, it becomes a pick your poison type of thing for NFL defenses. Who are you going to try and take away? Because both of these guys can do the exact same thing.
No, absolutely. And now, Daniel, it feels like those top 9 picks, is that another tier, or have you got any players that you feel are worthy alongside Brian Thomas and Troy Franklin?
So I do think that you can make the argument that that's a tier, right? But because of the landing spot for this player and what I believe is going to be a year where he does get to learn about football in the NFL game, I'm going to put JJ McCarthy in that. I think that getting a chance to sit behind a year of an NFL quarterback that, let's be honest, Geno Smith was a forgotten player for years. He was a backup. And then the last couple of years with Shane Waldron, we were talking about earlier, he was able to morph into a guy where they used his talents the right way. He was throwing balls, like accurate balls down the field to DK Metcalf and obviously Tyler Lockett. You add in Jackson Smith and Jigba. They have a really good offensive line, a young offensive line, and a two-headed backfield. That's where I'm looking at this with JJ McCarthy, who, again, I'm a Michigan fan. I've watched a lot of JJ McCarthy over the last couple of years, and I'll be, again, honest with you. It's tough to evaluate him from the spectrum of what Jim Harbaugh was asking him to do. Now, you have a lot of third down and money down success. He was the best quarterback in college football last year on those third downs and when you got to have it downs. The charts are out there. So that is important for him, but the down to down consistency was not. And I personally, my own opinion is that he was not asked to throw the football enough in those big games to really get on a consistent basis. The talent's all there. The athletic ability is there. He can run the ball. He's a very good athlete. And I think that dropping him into this offense, not in 2000, again, this is a play for 2025 because he will sit a year, but you get that year of experience and you grow as a quarterback and as a player to use all those tools and those weapons. I think that JJ McCarthy can put himself in this tier very comfortably with a year off of just watching how it's done.
Yeah, I think the upside and the potential is absolutely there. I think the tools are fantastic. Do you think that any quarterback that is drafted in the NFL draft in that first round, as you can see here in the mock, he went 16 overall. Do you think any quarterback drafted in that first round is worthy of a first round Superflex pick?
To Seattle,
Just
going to Seattle.
Any quarterback drafted in the first round, if they're drafted in the first 32 picks in the NFL draft, would you be comfortable drafting them in the first round of a fantasy draft?
I gotcha. So this is where it stops for me. If you get more than this, then I don't feel comfortable because I'm not personally a Bo Nix guy. I've seen a lot of Michael Penix. I mean, again, he could end up going to Washington as well because of the offensive coordinator in Washington is now his ex-head coach. And there's a lot of different things that go on there. So I think that JJ McCarthy is where it ends for me. That would be also landing spot dependent. If he goes to a place where he can sit and learn, I'm much more apt to take him in the first round than I would be if he goes somewhere where he's going to be expected to be the starter and have to take those lumps, because a lot of times you see those lumps not generate into success, especially with these later first round picks. I mean, Kenny Pickett is one of the guys that I've seen who probably shouldn't have been a first round pick, and he ended up going to Pittsburgh, and now they're trying to figure out if him or Mason Rudolph is going to be the starter next year. So I have a lot of questions about landing spot, but I do think the buck stops with JJ McCarthy for me.
Okay, and coming to you now, Dave, the 11th pick. Daniel talked about there potentially being a tier cut off kind of here, maybe not including JJ McCarthy. Is there anybody you particularly want to include in this section, or is this a point that you'd be looking to potentially trade back?
Yeah, I think this is a good spot where I would be trying to trade up into the top 9 or trying to trade back. I'd rather 2 early second round picks or an early second and a future second over, this pick right here. Because a lot of these people are just very similar. I think there's still good players on the board. It's just you're not going to get a Troy Franklin here. And so, Penix medical is going to be big. And so we'll see where the NFL takes him in this mock. Just to kind of set the table, Las Vegas traded for Justin Fields, so everyone knows. And then Bo Nix went to Minnesota and Michael Penix went to Atlanta. And Atlanta is a very interesting spot. And so if Penix goes second round to Atlanta to compete with Desmond Ridder, that means that medical's checked out fairly well. And so you're looking at him there. And then I have my top running back would be Trey Benson based on landing spots. So I'm going to go Trey Benson and throw everybody off. I know you've seen a lot of mock drafts with no running back in the first round. Let's be honest here. Every dynasty team is thirsty for running backs. They're going to go in the first round. So everyone that's saying that I'm reaching for Trey Benson, I apologize, but this is how it's going to happen in your draft. You're going to see 2, maybe 3 running backs in the first round. Trey Benson, I took him over Jonathan Brooks, landing spot. Jonathan Brooks goes to Tampa behind Rachaad White. Trey Benson goes to Baltimore with that offense. I love the offense there in Baltimore. I love running backs on good offenses. He can catch, he can run, he's got the size, good offensive line, and then Lamar Jackson opening up lanes. Sign me up.
Yeah, if you want to see a mock draft of people trying not to draft running backs, feel free to check out last week's with Ryan McDowell and Kevin Coleman. Both of them played running back chicken, I think is the official term. Fantastic landing spot for Benson here, obviously in Baltimore. It feels like this could be a dream landing spot for any running back. Gus Edwards contract finishes. There's some void years. We'll find out if they re-sign him potentially over the coming days. J.K. Dobbins obviously finishes rookie contract. Do you think that Trey Benson could be, I guess, fantasy relevant from day one if he indeed he did get this day 2 draft capital and landing spot of Baltimore?
Yeah, whichever running back goes to Baltimore, and I could put Chargers in here too, I'm going to be very, very interested in. And Trey Benson got the draft capital that I'm looking for. So that's why I put him above the others. It was very close with Jonathan Brooks, but it's a messy situation. If he does go to Tampa Bay, Rachaad White was great. I broke down a little bit at the end of the season, but if you see Rachaad White and Jonathan Brooks together, they have a new change of offensive coordinator, so you're going to see a change there. I love the offensive Baltimore.
No, absolutely. And John, before we get to your 112, I've got a quarterback-based question for you here. Are we selling or holding T-Law? I have Stroud and Trevor Lawrence as well as the 102, and the 101 is locked in to take in Marvin. What are you doing in that situation?
I think I'm holding at this point. So like I have to preface all this. I'm kind of the wrong person to ask that particular question. My strategy of choice I call quarterback extreme, which typically calls for a minimum of 5 starting NFL quarterbacks on your dynasty Superflex roster. So my real answer here is keep Trevor Lawrence, take a quarterback at 102, and find a way to add 2 more quarterbacks along the way because you're still not totally there. I get it with Trevor Lawrence. I get the hesitation. I get the concern. But I do think that kind of a little bit of a shift here in offensive philosophy, and just kind of refresh the weapons a little bit, and I think we're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think if you're looking to sell Trevor Lawrence, you're doing it at the wrong time as well. I think that his perceived value in the marketplace is lower than probably what
Yeah.
his value in production is going to be like over the next couple of years, particularly when I'd imagine at some point in the next 12 months, he's going to sign a mega contract and be in that Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, $50
Yeah.
million a year range, where as soon as he signs that contract, his dynasty value goes up. So I think
Which,
at least hold until May. But I
yeah.
agree with you. I'm happy having 3 elite quarterbacks on my roster.
And that's all we're really looking for in Superflex is job security. That's all we really need. We need warm bodies at quarterback. It's not that any of these guys has just kind of a much higher ceiling than anybody else. They all have a very similar floor. The Lamar Jackson is going to give you a little bit more of a ceiling than anybody else, but for the most part, we're just kind of looking for someone who gives us a shot on a weekly basis at just kind of a baseline quarterback score somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 points, and somebody who you can just kind of count on them being in one of those two quarterback spots. That you're going to get enough points to be competitive, and that you don't have to address the position again for a while. Trevor Lawrence checks all those boxes.
No, absolutely. And now we've waited for your 112. Who's it going to be?
So I love the pick that Dave just made, going running back, because that's what we really want to be able to do here. It's kind of what where you would really just kind of like to trade back out of these spots. I think that's kind of the move here. So I'm going to stay away from the running backs for now, as much as I want to make those picks. I'm going to go just based on, all right, so you can't trade out, like, what's the value pick here? And to me, I think it's probably going to be Xavier Leggett, going to Carolina with the first pick of the second round. Finally giving Bryce Young a number one wide receiver, and starting to kind of rebuild that offense a little bit. So I think that's kind of the value play here. I would much rather go running back if I could, but like I said, I think that the real move would be to trade back and then take your running back, because I think you're going to get that same guy a few picks later.
Yeah, I guess it's going to be interesting to see if the NFL draft plays out as we're expecting over the next few months. I feel like everybody's going to be looking to move out of these 111, 112 picks, and it could be that they almost become so undervalued they become a value. But it's going to be interesting to see, because I think somebody's probably going to stick their hand up at that running back position, get a landing spot, as Dave said, and kind of jump up into that spot. If before we move into second round, if you are here, you've made it 42 minutes into the video and you've not hit the subscribe button, do us a solid, hit that subscribe, and we'll keep more content coming your way. Now, Daniel, we're gonna move a little bit quicker through the second round. Who just tickles your fancy here at the 201?
Yeah, this one is when we get to start to look a little bit more in depth at those landing spots, right? I see Keon Coleman on the board here, and that doesn't make much sense to me. He's a first round pick, but they have Tank Dell, they have Nico Collins. Keon Coleman doesn't feel like that pick makes a lot of sense to me. So I also don't think that he could break the 1 or the 2 spot. I think that it would be really difficult for him to become fantasy relevant there. So I'm going to go ahead and take a wide receiver that's going to be attached to an elite quarterback in Adonai Mitchell right here for the Chargers, because I think he finds his way to being the second wide receiver in that offense right away. He's better than I'm just blanking on the guy from Quentin Johnston, yeah, out of TCU from last year. He's better than him. We know, at least from everything that we're hearing right now, that I'm hearing, Mike Williams is not going to be there anymore. They have to make some cuts here, and at the very least, you have Keenan Allen there, who is a little bit older, but a really, really good player still. And he can be a really nice 1-2 wide receiver punch there with an elite quarterback. I understand the reservations about them running the football in LA, but this pairing for me is too good to pass up at this point.
Yeah, it's fascinating. As it stands, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both under contract for a total of $67 million next year. I hate to be breaking news, but I think there's no chance that both of those are playing on those contracts next year. I think either they're released or they're re-signed to some sort of extension. But yeah, interesting landing spot, and as you said, tied to an elite quarterback, it's hard not to get excited. Dave, 202. Anyone jumping out to you right now?
AD Mitchell was. So that was a good pick. I really did like that pick because same thing you're saying. It's Keon Coleman. The Atlantic spot's kind of hard. And then you're looking at. I love Jonathan Brooks. I'd love to take him here, but like that situation, him going to Tampa in this scenario is tough. And so we talked earlier. John made a great point about warm bodies. We saw about 60, I think 62 different starting quarterbacks last year. Michael Penix, I get it. There's going to be a lot of concerns for season-ending injuries in his career. Tore his right ACL twice, dislocated both shoulders. But he's going to Atlanta. He got second-round draft capital. It's Superflex. I can get it in the second round. Give me Michael Penix here. Going to Atlanta in this offense where Zach Robinson said, things to whisper and sweet nothings to fantasy owners yesterday, talking about he's going to utilize the best players the way they're supposed to be used.
No, it's exciting, and it feels like he's the kind of quarterback that could potentially get the best out of at least a couple of those enticing weapons in Atlanta. Hopefully, all three. John, coming to you now for the third pick in the second round. Anybody left on the board that you're surprised that has made it this far?
No, not really. No, this seems like the right range for all of these guys. You're kind of in dart throw territory with the wide receivers a little bit, and that's where the running backs kind of get caught up. I'm gonna break my embargo here on quarterbacks and go ahead and take the last viable quarterback, I believe, with Bo Nix going to Minnesota, who first of all is in need of a long-term option at quarterback, and second, just the way I've seen the Minnesota Vikings fan base fall in love with every quarterback who comes in there. Bo Nix is going to be the most popular guy in town. They're going to get him on the field. They're going to get him an opportunity. So it's not the draft capital that we typically want. Kind of what Harms was saying earlier. You're really looking for early first round guys for the most part, or else you run a risk of getting kind of 50-50 propositions at best. Start talking about guys like Kenny Pickett. So it's not the draft capital that we typically want for a quarterback, but I think the landing spot is good enough that I wowould take a chance here.
Yeah, it's any quarterback that's throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and
True.
throwing TJ Hawkinson in that mix, it's he's going to be able to put up some fantasy points. Now, come back to you, Daniel. Is this a point where you're starting to consider potentially reaching on some guys to go and get your guy, or are you still sticking to that board and looking at best player available?
Yeah, I think you can do a little bit of both here, and that's honestly what I'm looking at right now. But this is the territory that we are talking about, where you've got your flag plants. I've got guys that I really love. I got some landing spots that I really love. You may as well go get them at this point. And while I don't love the landing spot here, I love the player, and he is now going to be tied to a young quarterback. And Xavier Worthy is a player that I really love. He can be the number one receiver in New England, not even just this year, but going forward for a long time. I think that he has that skill set. Again, we talk about the explosive playmaking for some of these players, and tied to now Drake May, who, again, we talked about in New England. We don't know what we're going to see there, but I do love those players together. And when you have young quarterbacks and you have young wide receivers tied together, they can typically make a pretty decent connection over their careers for however short that may be, and in the offense they're in. So I'm going to take Xavier Worthy, and I love the quarterback wide receiver matchup there.
Yeah, I'm a huge Worthy fan. I think anyone that has the level of true freshman year that he did, I think we can say is going to be a fairly good bet to have success at the NFL level. I'm really excited if he does land in a situation like this with a Drake May, where, yes, we're talking about it being a bad landing spot, but he's tied to a potential franchise quarterback that we know has the talent. So between the two of them, we saw it in Houston last year with what was potentially a bad landing spot, but actually you put a young quarterback, a young wide receiver, you tie them together and they can cause magic. So, yeah, if I was in this draft, I'd have been banging down the door of John and Dave over those last few picks to try and trade up to get Xavier Worthy. Dave, any flag plants that you're particularly eyeing up here, or are we going to stick with best player available and just scoop up value?
Yeah, I'm just gonna believe in the talent. Jonathan Brooks gets a year to kind of not be the main guy. We'll see what they do. Rashad White, his contract's coming up here in a couple of years. Liam Cohen is the offensive coordinator now in Tampa Bay. It's still a good offense, and I'm just gonna take best player and play the ADP game. A couple guys I like just the same. I would trade back from this spot if I could, but can't trade in this. Let's take Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah, such a travesty that he got that injury. I loved him on film. I love the talent, but as you said, the injury means he's hopefully going to be a screaming value in rookie drafts. But it's hard to draft a player that you're going to have to sit for a year. So John, now we're at the 206, halfway through the second rounds. Where are you going to go here?
This is where I think you can start hammering running back. And the nice thing with running back is you don't have to worry too much about draft capital. We've seen a willingness of NFL teams over the years to develop amnesia in terms of where they drafted those players. If the talent's there, if the situation is there, they're going to get on the field. And so I'm going to go to Marshawn Lloyd going to the LA Chargers. We've got him going super, super late in this mock draft. But it's the opportunity. It's such a climbable depth chart with Austin Eckler likely gone. You're really kind of talking about Joshua Kelly, Isaiah Spiller. That's what he has to overcome to get any kind of role in this backfield. Not only that, you're getting Jim Harbaugh coming in, loves to run the football. It's going to be very run heavy early on. So, as much as it looks like a reach just based on the draft capital, I think this is one of the better landing spots for a running back, and you're getting a very talented thumper type of running back to go along with it.
Yeah, it feels like whatever running back the Chargers end up drafting, as Dave mentioned earlier when he was talking about the Ravens, them and the Chargers, whoever ends up there, it feels like it's going to be a fancy favorite for many dynasty teams moving forward. Daniel, moving into that second half of the second round, where are you going to go now?
I was going to take Marshawn Lloyd, so thanks, John, for that one. I was trying to get those LA Charger stack players there, and I love Marshawn Lloyd. He's a lot of fun. I think he goes a lot higher than he is in this draft, but that's neither here nor there. So I am going to stick in the running back vein, though, because one of my favorite backs in this class went to another offense that, yes, I know it's tough with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback, but I think Bucky Irving is a better running back than what we've seen out of DeAndre Swift, and he can score those ones where he just kept falling at the 1 yard line, where he just kept falling and just could not get in there. And I think Bucky Irving is a guy who can not only do that, but he does all this scheme you can run. He probably projects more as a gap power guy where he gets into space and really can make guys miss, but he has the vision to be able to play that zone that they're going to play in Philadelphia. He's got really good hands too. So I love the landing spot here, and I think he's going to be a guy that gets a lot of work in Philadelphia.
Yeah, Bucky Irving's my RB1 at the moment. So I agree with everything you said. Any concern that there could be a reduced passing down role given Jalen Hurts' lack of checkdowns?
That's definitely possible, and I think that one of the things that he has to do as a quarterback is do the things he's not comfortable doing, which is throw over the middle of the field and check the ball down every now and then if he wants to maybe not take as many hits as he has and get the offense back to where they have been. So we'll see. The growth there needs to happen a little bit, but there is always that concern in Philadelphia with the pass catching.
And then Dave, coming to you next. We've still got a first-round wide receiver on the board. Are you going to grab him here, or are you looking elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, Keon Coleman going to Houston. If we don't have a crystal ball on this one to know if Nico Collins resigns or not. That changes everything. Keon Coleman, I really need to see what he runs at the combine before I do anything. And not that I'm a huge combine means everything, but this is a guy that is he's straight line speed guy. He's a big guy. He's a 50-50 ball, but we need to see some of that quick twitch. We need to see him, how he runs routes and things like that against others. He doesn't create a lot of separation. You don't see that on tape. Analytics agrees. And so I'm sticking to the running backs. I thought Daniel was going to go here. He got the hat on. Blake Corum with the Bengals. Joe Mixon likely out of town. I said it earlier. I want running backs on good offenses. This is a good offense. I know they were not great last year. This is a positive regression candidate. Joe Burrow and the boys will be back. This will be a good offense, and Blake Corum could be the number one. Chase Brown, I think people are excited about him, but I think they saw a couple nice highlights and forget that he really was not fantasy relevant, does not have any high draft capital, and is not built like an RB1. Blake Corum will be the guy if this scenario plays out, and he's got good draft capital in this scenario.
Yeah, anytime teams spending day 2 draft capital on a running back, you tend to think that they're going to be rolling with that guy moving forward. John, are you going to continue the trend of running backs and make it 5 in a row?
Nope. I'm going to corner the market on tight ends here, actually, because I think that so here's one of the things that we've learned over time, and I'm very, very narrative based. Very rarely does it happen that the top tight end in a rookie class is the guy who actually hits. It's usually somebody a little bit further down the board. Ja'Tavion Sanders would be the number 1 tight end if Brock Bowers didn't exist. But since Brock Bowers is kind of the human shield here, Ja'Tavion Sanders is primed for a massive, massive breakout as a rookie. He's in the right offense here. They're just desperate for some weapons, and he can do a little bit of everything. He not a super experienced blocker, but he's shown the ability to he's a good enough blocker that they're going to have a hard time taking him off the field, especially with the abilities that he's got, not only catching the ball, but creating yards after the catch. So I think that he's in a great spot in Carolina, and I think just the talent alone warrants a consideration here.
Yeah, absolutely. I said last week that if it wasn't for Brock Bowers, Ja'Tavion Sanders would be getting ahead of a lot more hype right now. I think he's, ticks an awful lot of boxes. He's a fantastic athlete, and I'm really excited of the potential he could be, and to get it this late in the second round, it feels like good value. Now, Daniel, your final pick, who are you going to send us out on?
Yeah, this is it was going to, again, John once again taking my guys. It was going to be Ja'Tavion Sanders. Just keep sniping me, but we're going to get a little crazy here because I'm much higher in this player than I think consensus is. I also like the landing spot quite a bit, and I'm going to take Spencer Rattler here. And in Pittsburgh, you still have a good enough defense. You have the weapons. You have an offensive line that's growing. It's getting better. And you have a 1-2 punch at running back with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. I think it's a really good fit for him, or again, he might have to sit maybe a year, but at the end of the day, his talent is better than Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett. He could be their starter going forward, and it wouldn't shock me at all. There are just some of the concerns with his decision making, but I think in a place like Pittsburgh, this is a really good spot for him right here at the end of the second round. Would be a nice place to take one of the chances on this guy.
Yeah, it feels like if he did end up in that Pittsburgh landing spot, we keep hearing that the NFL is higher on him than the media realize, and that sort of narrative seems to very much be out there. And I wouldn't be shocked if he landed in Pittsburgh that he's starting this year. I think that they've already sailed on Kenny Pickett. I think we know that Mason Rudolph isn't the long-term answer. At some point, they're going to realize halfway through the season, what have we got to lose rolling out either of those guys? Let's turn to the young rookie. So, I think that's a fantastic value and a really interesting land spot if he did land in Pittsburgh. So, Dave, your final pick. Who are you going to? Are we going to finally see that first round wide receiver drafted, or are you going to let him dangle out there to the third round?
I might. I mean, there's still got day 2 draft capital for one running back. You got day 2 draft capital for quite a few receivers. And, receivers have shown us you don't have to have first round draft capital to be a stud. It's usually the second and third round that give us a lot of our, top tier receivers. And with Keon Coleman, again, it's the same stuff I said before. Lad McConkey is in conversation. Tennessee, he goes there. Hopkins could be out of town. If Hopkins stays, you got Traylon Burks, Lad McConkey leading, the future with Will Levis. And then, for quarterbacks, Michael Pratt's the next thing you got. So I'm going to go with Jalen Wright, just playing running back roulette, trying to hit on one of those guys. Third round draft capital, going to Green Bay. Even if Aaron Jones is back, Aaron Jones is never, completely taken over the backfield. And he's getting older, so he's going to be out of town here soon. And so this is a guy with rare first step quickness. He's got great size. And, not a lot of people are talking about Jalen Wright, and I think they need to be. And so I really like the spot here. And third round draft capital, sign me up.
Yeah, and AJ Dillon, a free agent, likely gone as well. It certainly gets better as you keep on talking. Now, John, with your final pick, are you who are you going to send us out with?
We're going out with Braylon Allen. Kind of like Dave was saying, we're just kind of playing roulette at the running back position. I'm going off a landing spot. I'm going off of, there's a little bit of regionality to this as well. The fact that he's just moving over one state, bringing the snow tires with him. You finally get kind of a big power back in that Minnesota offense, and kind of get some of the toughness that they've been lacking since Dalvin Cook kind of dropped off. So, I think that there's an opportunity to carve out a unique role for Braylon Allen, who at one point was considered the top running back in this draft class. I think that they're getting a steal in the 5th round, and I think we're getting a steal here at the end of the 2nd round.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that brings us to the conclusion of the 2 rounds. I think fascinating, throwing in draft capital, throwing in some landing spots, how much it changes things around. If there are guys that you think you're shocked where they went, let us know in the comments below. But before we go, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. If you could let everybody know where they can find you, where they can find your work.
Well, again, I appreciate you having me on, Rich. It was a lot of fun to do this with you guys. I really enjoyed this little different take. I don't get to do this all the time, so it was a lot of fun. You guys can find me on Twitter, or X if that's what you want to call it. I always will call it Twitter, at in Harm's Way 19. I cover the Chiefs at rgrfootball.com. I do all my film stuff over there. And then Football Guys is where all of my fantasy content will be. I also just started a draft podcast at Cover One. You can find that on YouTube or my page as well. So again, appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. And then Dave, thank you so much for jumping on. It's great to hear your thoughts and pick your brains a little bit. Where can everybody find your work?
Sportsgamblingpodcast.com. We're doing, did a mock draft here recently, doing some more dynasty work for them.
And John, to round us out again, thank you so much. Lovely to pick your brains and drop in the this quarterback extreme methodology. Where can the viewers and listeners find yourself?
Oh, thanks for having me on, Island. Really appreciate it, man. Superflex Super Show is a podcast. Right, sometimes rank all the time for dynastyleaguefootball.com. I'm on Twitter. I still call it Twitter, by the way. Just kind of out of spite. Yeah. I don't like Twitter, but I'm there at Superflex Dude. Always happy to talk in DMs. I just don't spend a whole lot of time. You're not going to get much out of me in terms of substantive tweets.
Awesome. And before you all go, guys, one late round sleeper from each of you. Daniel, who you got?
Frank Gore Jr., especially in this way. I'm a big fan of Frank Gore Jr., and I like that he would be going to Tennessee in this situation because you don't know Derrick Henry's gone, and he could be a guy that ends up taking over that backfield a little bit. But again, they have a couple of guys there already, Tajay Spears, but Frank Gore Jr. is a guy to watch for his landing spot.
Awesome. And Dave, I've seen you've dropped a couple in the comments already. Who's your favorite later on sleeper?
I'm surprised Roman Wilson is still available here. Roman Wilson is someone that is definitely been rising since the Senior Bowl, but he was in a situation in Michigan where he, like JJ McCarthy, was not asked to do a lot, but people have really starting to rise on him. And then we saw him, the Senior Bowl does a nice job of putting all these great players together. You could see them side by side, and Roman Wilson was just the buzz. I put some other ones in the chat. Check it out. Cody Schrader is another fun one. Sorry, John.
Awesome. And then John, coming to you last. Who's your late round sleeper of choice?
Oh man, yeah, Dave kind of sniped me to avenge harms over there. But I think I'm gonna go with Ray Davis. Really like the talent, anyways, and then I think Buffalo's still a very good landing spot for a running back. So, but kind of like we were saying throughout this thing, there's a lot of value just in kind of taking some shots at running back, just in general. Just kind of becomes a numbers game. Get as many of those guys as you can, because they're all going to have an opportunity to get on the field.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining. If you are still here and you haven't checked out, Tom's dropped some pre-agency previews in terms of the quarterback and the wide receiver position. We've got rookie positional previews coming in the next few weeks. Stick around. We will have so much more for you.